Hello everyone, welcome, Pkmn here, and today we're gonna be giving you guys my top 6, kind of a guide to find the best decks that are gonna allow you to get your mythical island as 5-win event, 5-win streak event. And I just got mine this morning with these Gyarados decks, a pretty straightforward Gyarados deck, nothing weird going on here, but it's so strong, guys. I was able to go 11-0, so I got double the amount of required wins with this deck. So yeah, what I'm gonna try to do today, guys, is give you 6 decks that can get you for sure your event 5-win streak, and I'm gonna try to score them from the best one to the more average one, in my opinion, and I'm gonna try to give you guys my criteria as to how I'm scoring these decks. But before we jump into the video, guys, I would really appreciate if you like the video and consider subscribing, as well as follow me over on Twitch so I can continue to produce all this fun content for Pokemon, and I really do appreciate it, guys. Anyway, so if you only care about the deck list, you can go straight down below and just grab whatever deck list you want from the 6 decks. All these 6 decks are meant to be used as a guide more than an actual example. Like, if you want to play some tech cards in those decks, that is something you can do without changing a lot, really. So think of it more of an archetype ranking, right? Am I gonna rank all of these archetypes? From these 6 archetypes, I'm gonna try to give you guys what is the best for your time. And before we go into that, though, I wanna say you should always play the deck or the archetype you find the most fun. Fun come always first and foremost for whenever you're trying to grind. So take into consideration your mental health, guys. Always play what you consider most fun. So if you guys want to hear me out on what my criteria, I'm about to explain it. I'm going to judge all these decks through 4 criteria. The first criteria would be through speed. How lengthy is my average match with this deck or this archetype? The second one is skill. How experienced must I be with this type of archetype so I can make this work out? And the third one would be how RNG dependent is this archetype? Some decks are going to be more RNG dependent than others, obviously. And finally, we're going to have Pokemon dependency. That means how dependent is my deck on a single Pokemon. So if I don't draw that Pokemon, I am probably going to lose the game, right? So those are the 4 criteria I'm going to be using to rank these archetypes. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you there. Right, guys, so let's start with the decks. First, we have the Celebi archetype. This is going to be number 6 on our list. And I have it at number 6 because, first of all, the speed of this deck is so-and-so. You're going to have pretty much average matches. Not too quick, not too long. So let's call it 3 out of 5 stars on this speed. In terms of experience, you don't need too much. I would say that you need in between 5 to 10 games to be able to start piloting this deck appropriately. In terms of decision making, you don't have that many decisions to make. Just need to make sure you are evolving your Snivy into your superior to be able to boost your Celebi and whatever other Pokemon you're bringing. So let's call it 3 out of 5 stars for that. In terms of RNG, this is probably the worst deck of all, guys. It's a lot of RNG, obviously, because of the coin flips. You can get turn 2 attack with Celebi for 100 damage. You can get 0. It's very coin flip dependent, so it's going to be an 1 out of 5 stars for the RNG. Unfortunately, it's going to bring down the deck in terms of consistency. And finally, in terms of dependence, this deck is fine. You are really dependent on your evolution to superior. But even if there are some games where you are late or you don't get your superior, you should be able to, if you're lucky, get some coin flips on the Celebi to at least be able to take the first 2 points consistently. So it is not as bad as other decks. So I'm going to call it a 3 out of 5 star for the Pokemon dependency for a total of 10 stars. So this deck, this archetype, really strong. You can get your 5 wins with this easily. Just take into consideration that you're going to have to tolerate some fail coin flips, and you're gonna have to play around those. So if you're like impatient, if you don't like the RNG, you probably should stay clear of this one deck. Yeah, pretty strong deck. And obviously, if you don't want to take Delmice, you can switch it up for Executor, you can switch it up for Lilligant. There's a few versions of this deck that can work out fine. I take Delmice because I feel it brings the most consistency for the deck, and I don't have to worry about a second evolution line. Right, next in the number 5 spot, we have Gyarados. And I know, a lot of people are going to be on my ass for this one. I mean, it is probably the strongest deck in the meta if you're going to participate in something like a tournament. But in this setting, the thing about Gyarados is that it can take a while. Like, most of your games are going to be long games, man. So let me jump into the 4 criteria. First, speed. This deck is the slowest of the 6 archetypes we're going to be looking at today. You're going to have to wait a lot to set up your Gyarados unless you get a lucky Misty. So most of the time you're going to try to set up your walls and stall until you get your Gyarados with 4 energy. Once you do have that, though, you just straight up win the game. So it is pretty strong, pretty consistent, but it takes a while, guys. So if you don't have much time to play your win streak event, you should probably look at another deck. Like, this one is going to be really long games, and it could take you up to a few hours to get your win streak if you're losing a lot. So yeah, so I'm going to give this one, let's say 1 out of 5 star for speed. Very slow, very stally. In terms of skill, I'd say that this deck is actually pretty easy to pilot. Like, the idea is pretty simple. You just have to protect your Gyarados and get to 4 energy. Pretty easy. No, like, weird stuff. Your decision making is pretty straightforward. So let's call it 5 out of 5 in terms of difficulty. Pretty easy to pilot. Love to see it. In terms of RNG, though, it has some RNG. Like, you don't need Misty to win by any means. But if you're trying to get your streak, you might find yourself in a tight spot here and there. And, you know, getting 1 extra energy or 2 from Misty in those situations really helps. So, you know, there's some RNG involved. You shouldn't, like, rule out the Misty at all because you're going to need it at some point. So if you don't like RNG at all, this might not be the best for you, but it's still better than Celebi, of course. So let's call it 4 out of 5 stars for RNG. And then finally, in terms of Pokemon dependency, this deck is obviously really dependent on getting your Magikarp and getting to your Gyarados. Your Magikarp is easier to get because we have the Pokeball, but sometimes those 2 Gyarados, man, they're going to be on the bottom of your library, and you're going to face a really tough spot where you have to buy time, keep buying time, more time, and the opponent could just set up a combo with Mewtwo and get you down before you get your Gyarados. So unfortunately, this deck suffers from dependency on that Gyarados. You need to have at least 1 in your hand to be able to pull off, so sometimes you might struggle. And because of that, I'm gonna give it a 1 out of 5 stars for Pokemon dependency, and which it's gonna take us to 11 points. So just above Celebi. Still, this is probably, in my opinion, the strongest deck of the meta and of these 6. But in terms of your time and your efficiency in terms of getting to this event, I'd say this is number 5 on my list. Remember, all of these decks are viable. You can get your 5 wins with any of these decks. They're really strong. But if you don't have as much time, you should probably go with one of the other 4. Right, next we have everyone most hated archetype, Mewtwo, with Gardevoir. I know, guys, the reason why people play this is because it wins game a lot, right? So let's judge this through the eyes of consistency and those 4 criteria. First of all, this deck is just an example. I like to run Porygon instead of Seacliff or anything else here, instead of Chatot, because I find it more consistent with these labs. You can play your scan with your Porygon and then use your slab to guarantee you hit something with that. But you can switch that spot. You can go for Chatot, you can go for 1 normal Mew, you can go for Seacliff. There's a lot of versions for this deck, but the most important thing is obviously the Mewtwo and the Gardevoir still. So in terms of skill and speed, let's go for speed. So this deck, it's average. You're gonna see most of your games be average speed. Sometimes you're gonna have to stall a little bit if you're not getting lucky with your Gardevoir, and the deck is well prepared to do that. Like, the Mew X should be able to give you enough time and switch out with the retreat cost being so low, allowing you to tank some hits So even if you don't get your Gardevoir particularly early, you should be able to stall and be able to push with your combo. So I'm gonna say 3 out of 5 stars for speed. In terms of skill, how much experience you don't need with this deck to be able to make it work. And I'll say, again, average, within 5 to 10 games, you should be able to figure out what the correct way to make your decision making for this deck is. It's not a hard archetype to learn. I'd say average 3 out of 5 stars. Pretty average deck. And next we have RNG. I know that people are gonna look at me weird, but this deck is actually very consistent on RNG. You don't need to depend on any coin flips. There's no coin flips involved. If you're using Mew and you're using genome hacking, you might do some coin flipping, but it's very not. It's very rare that happens. You have no coin flips, no RNG. Love to see it. 5 out of 5 stars in terms of RNG. And next would be the Pokemon dependency. How dependent is Pokemon? I mean, this deck is on any one Pokemon. And obviously, if you don't get your Gardevoir, you're not gonna win games. So unfortunately, we are very dependent on being able to pull that Gardevoir evolution before the opponent has the chance to, do whatever we want. Ideally, the Slabs and the Porygon or whatever Pokemon you decide to go with should be allow you to get your Gardevoir in time. But honestly, if you don't get it for whatever reason, if it's on the bottom of your library, you're gonna suffer. Yeah, you're gonna lose the game, and you don't like to see that. So it's a 2 out of 5 stars in terms of being dependent on that Gardevoir. And let's get to the next deck. All right, on the number 3 spot, we have what I like to call the Revenge Fighting deck, or the Revenge archetype. You guys probably have seen this already at some point. Running Aerodactyl with the Old Amber, we're running Marshadow, we're running Hitmonlee, which is really strong against Gyarados, and Snipeys in general. We have Monkeys and Primates. So pretty much the idea of this archetype is to hit fast and be able to switch out, pivot out your Pokemon with a really cheap retreat cost. All of these retreat costs are 1. So we're running 2x speed to guarantee we're not wasting any energy. The whole point of this archetype is to be efficient with your energies, guys, and be able to not depend on any EX. This deck is really strong against most of the meta. Like, I have not seen a single bad matchup for this, even against Mewtwo. So this is one archetype I would really recommend you guys try if you haven't yet. And it's really good and really strong for the event. So let's try to judge this through the eyes of those four criteria. In terms of speed, this deck is actually not as speedy as you would think. I would say a little bit quicker than average. Depending on how good you are with the deck, you're going to have to move your Pokemon a lot, retreat a lot. If you're not retreating your Pokemon here, you might find yourself in a situation where you don't have enough damage to finish the match. So it's actually not as fast as you would think. The other 2 decks on the top are going to be faster. But still, it's pretty good. I'm going to call it 4 out of 5 stars here in terms of speed. And in terms of skill, that's the thing. This deck takes a lot of practice to get it right. It's not an easy deck to pilot, I guarantee you guys. Gyarados, Mewtwo, and Celebi are going to be easier to learn. So if you don't want to learn this deck during the event, I would probably recommend you go for another one. I'm going to call these 2 out of 5 stars in terms of how difficult it is to learn. And in terms of RNG, we have some RNG here and there, just because we have coin flips. Not too much though. I am just running the version with the monkey. And that's gonna come with some coin flips, but you can run anything else. Honestly, you can run the normal monkey and not have to coin flip at all. So in terms of range, it's pretty good. So I'm gonna call it a 4 out of 5 stars here. And then finally, and this is a nice part of this deck, it is pretty non-Pokemon dependent. You can start with your monkeys, you can start with your Aerodactyl, you can start with your Marshadows in hand, even with the Hitmonlee. And since the retreat costs are so low, we want to be able to pivot around and make sure we don't lose any Pokemon easily at the beginning of the game. So it is a pretty flexible, pretty non-dependent on any one Pokemon deck. I really like that about this one archetype. So overall, pretty strong. Take some practice, guys. If you lose a lot with this deck, don't be discouraged. It takes a while to learn it. But it's a pretty strong deck overall. And yeah, let's call this one 15 points. Pretty good. Pretty good. Let's go for the next one. Next, we have the Pikachu EX deck. Everyone's favorite, seems to be. Pretty consistent. Let's go over it. Nothing you haven't seen before. In this particular version, I'm running Zebstrika, I'm running the Galvantula, and I'm running just one Zapdos as well as one Dendin. But you can run the version with Sergeant Lieutenant. Oh, I forgot its name, god dang. But you can run the version with Raichu and the normal Pikachu. You can run that as well, it doesn't matter. As long as you have your EX, and as long as you are going for a lot of Pokemon-based Pokemon to be able to get those 90 damage on the EX, you're fine. Just take this idea as an example of how to build a Pikachu EX archetype deck. Let's go over the criteria. Speed, I'd say 4 or 5. It is pretty speedy, man. Like, this deck goes hard very fast. I'd say 4 out of 5 just because there's another deck that is faster. But it's pretty good at that, honestly. So 4 out of 5 stars in terms of speed. In terms of skill, I'd say this is one of the easier decks to figure out. 4 out of 5 stars, really, really easy to play, really easy to figure out. Only good things to say about this deck in general. All you have to do is put your 3 Pokemons behind your Pikachu and hit for 90 damage on turn 2. You cannot get more damage than that for such a cheap amount of energy. So, love to see it. RNG, I'd say the only RNG here would be the flips on the Zapdos. And honestly, I wouldn't read out the deck out of Zapdos just because there are some situations where you're kinda trying to get that last bit of damage to win the game, but you don't get it from the Pikachu, so you can go with the Zapdos 3 energy and just roll the dice. And I'd say that that is going to come into play 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 games. So it's not something you can just discard right off from the start. So yeah, it has some RNG, not too much. I'd say 4 out of 5 star for RNG. And finally, on the dependency issue, I'd say this deck can go well even without the Pikachu EX. I mean, you'll love to see your Pikachu EX, don't take me wrong, but you can go with Denden, you can go with Zebstrika, Blitz, you can go with Galvantula and have a good start. You can even start with the Zapdos and be fine. So 4 out of 5 points in terms of non-dependency on any one Pokemon, which is pretty cool. For a total of 16 points, that's our number 2 deck here with Pikachu EX. And let's go with my favorite and I think the strongest deck for this event. And that is going to be my number 1 best deck or best archetype to get your 5 wins in this event, guys, is going to be Flame Fire Aggro. Without question, this deck is insane. It is incredibly fast to play. It's super easy to understand how to pilot. It is incredibly strong no matter what hand you get. Even if you only get your bull picks, you're most likely going to be able to come back into the game even if you're lacking like your second Pokemon, basic Pokemon. It is really strong and it's really consistent. So let's go over the 4 criteria. I have it here. So in terms of speed, this is the fastest deck in the meta. And it's going to give you the most games per hour if you're trying to get your 5-win streak. So this is your best bet for that. It is really cheap to make. So let's go over that. 5 out of 5 stars in terms of speed. Skill, it is the easiest of these 6 decks to play by far. 5 out of 5 stars in terms of difficulty. It is really easy to understand and pilot. It is non-RNG dependent. There's no flips at all. I mean, there's flips on the Rapidash, but you can honestly not even rush the Rapidash. You can run the old Rapidash and get yourself rid of any coin flips at all. And even if you don't get your flips, it's still going to deal enough damage to get your points. So 5 out of 5 in terms of RNG, and 5 out of 5 in terms of consistency, not being one Pokemon dependent. Even if you draw Ponyta, if you draw Vulpix, if you draw the Farfetch, or any other Pokemon you want to take for that spot, you're going to be fine. As long as you can start hitting right away for 45-50 damage, you'll be fine. And most importantly, the Ninetales is going to be able to close most games. Like, even if you have a Gyarados in front of you, by the time the Gyarados gets the 4 energy, like Ninetales can hit 2-3 times. So you'll be perfectly fine, guys. This is an excellent deck to get the event done. If anything, you could play around with the amounts of lanes and Giovannis. You can add some Giovannis here if you're worried about, for example, being able to reach that 100 damage cap on the Ninetales, for example. But other than that, this is probably the cheapest, strongest deck in the meta right now. So I'm gonna recommend this one for tournaments, but for this one event, I think this is your best bet in terms of time and just how easy it is to pilot. So number one, playing aggro, and that makes all 6 decks, 6 archetypes. All of them are awesome to get your wins, guys. And all of those are going to be able to give you what you want as long as you're putting in enough time and you get enough like experience with your deck. So that's going to be it for me, guys. I really wish you all get your wins soon enough. You're done with the event. I know a lot of people don't like this event. I really like it because it allows some of the other decks that usually are not as strong in tournaments to shine. So I really like this event. I hope you guys find it to your liking. And if you do find this useful, I would really appreciate if you like the video and subscribe so I can keep producing this type of content for you guys in the future. And I'll see you next time. Kibo, signing out.